All right, so thanks for that great introduction. And as you guys know, as you've tuned in here to FoodTech21's event, the sessions we're covering are really kind of looking at the forward-facing technologies, brands, concepts that are really kind of moving to the next generation. And mainly, if you think about our session topic, which is virtual restaurants, the next frontier, the idea behind all of this was FoodTech21 is 21 the year, meaning next year. So everybody kind of wants to forget 2020. And with me today, I've got the CEO of Nextbite, which is Jeffrey Madding. Great to have you on the session, man.
Great to be here. Thanks, Paul.
Sure. Okay, so let's go into Nextbite, the concept of how you guys are plugged in with virtual restaurants. Kind of explain to our audience what Nextbite does and is.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Nextbite, we like to say we're a virtual restaurant group. So we created and are running a number of virtual restaurant brands. Those are brands that are available for delivery only across the U.S. right now. I believe we're in 30 plus states at the moment, growing rapidly. And we only deliver via what we call our fulfillment partners. Those fulfillment partners are existing operators. They're generally existing restaurateurs that are running their own restaurants, and they bring in these Nextbite brands to add to their portfolio of delivery. Mm-hmm. So for consumers, it gives them a lot more choice in their market with their existing restaurants and infrastructure. They're not competitive with the existing restaurants. We're actually enabling the existing restaurants to add more things. And for the restaurants, obviously right now especially, this gives them a chance to use their existing labor, their existing kitchen, their existing cost basis to add a lot more revenue and offer a lot more choices to the community.
Interesting. So within as a virtual restaurant platform, so to speak, you guys have developed the brands from the ground up. So you're dealing with menu development, you're dealing with the marketing aspect. What all do you take on and hand over to a new operator?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're precisely right. We do all the initial brand development. We do the marketing as well. We actually manage all the third-party applications. So like Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, et cetera. We have direct contracts with those those applications, and then we have a contract with the operators as well. So we deal with a lot of the headache there, if you will. Okay. So not only do we get the brands up and going, but we also manage them. We do everything except cook the food and buy the food. That's on our operator's plate. So, and we think that's why it's a really good match, because everyone gets to do what they're good at.
Yeah, I like that. So they don't have to go in and fill out the Uber and the Grubhub and all those fulfillment scenarios. You guys have already taken care of that on your end. So the contract is technically with you and Uber Eats, not brand X and or fulfillment partner X who's using one of the Nextbite brands.
Correct. For our brands, I want to be really clear. Yeah. If they're running their own brands, they still have a direct contract. Yeah. And we actually have transparency on that as well. Within our contract, we actually have addendums on our contract that show exactly what we're paying to those apps, exactly what we pay to our partners. And we believe that there needs to be transparency on all sides. Yeah. We're not trying to hide any costs here or kind of hide any revenue. We want to just share very, very clearly who's doing what, who's responsible for what.
Yeah, you know, with I guess with third-party delivery, there's that, I guess, a certain amount of pushback from the operator community based on the percentage that a third-party operator takes. When they go this route, are you negotiating on the pretense that you're going to have hundreds or maybe thousands of locations and working it through that way?
So we are, and I will tell you, we're early on. So now, when I say early on, we actually have, by the end of this month, have a couple hundred virtual restaurants out there. By the end of the year, might be close to 1,000, just with our virtual restaurant brands. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's new in the marketplace. So we are negotiating directly with those third parties. We can get some economies of scale there. But more than that, and what's more important, and certainly we're looking to add that value to our partners, but more than that, we're just looking to add more revenue on top with the same cost basis, which is crucial because, you know, as restaurateurs, you're trying to get a point here or there all the time. But if you can add 50% more revenue at the same cost basis, the numbers really change for you.
Yeah, I could see the incremental increase is pretty significant, especially if you don't have to increase your physical plant. You just look at incremental income. It's much like to go and carry out and catering, all those revenue centers that have obviously exploded. I could see how a third party or a new brand, that potentially could get you into a new category, maybe a whole new customer set, could be very beneficial. So just so we're transparent here, you guys are connected to Ordermark in a way, in the sense of, because Ordermark being a company that kind of manages third-party delivery through a technology platform, that's kind of how, and the reason you guys launched Nextbite, was that the purpose?
Yeah, so actually, so Ordermark is really the technology that enables Nextbite. Without Ordermark, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
I think you're fairly familiar with the technology and how it works. But for those of you in your audience that may not be, every time you add another of the third parties, they basically turn on a tablet for you. They send you a tablet through your restaurant, and this aggregates all those into one place with one dedicated printer. What you may not know is that we have partners that are doing 11 of our virtual restaurants plus their own virtual restaurant. And the way the third parties currently are servicing that is they would send a tablet for each one of those.
Each concept, yeah.
Meaning you might have 44 tablets in a restaurant, which is not manageable. These all plus the brick and mortar go on one tablet and one printer, and you can manage it all in one place with one interface, which is kind of how we're able to do this.
Yeah. I like that, the fact that you guys can, you're leveraging against that, building it across the platforms, which is very beneficial. Obviously, we have one less tablet in the game now with Uber and Postmates kind of coming together. Maybe we'll see one app for that coming down the pipe for sure. What are your thoughts on these acquisitions and these moves of the third-party companies as they go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of natural within market pressures, right? You've seen that we've certainly seen people complain about the take of some of these apps, but at the same time, these apps haven't necessarily been profitable. So everyone's trying to kind of figure out the market that works for everyone, and part of that is naturally kind of going to be this aggregation. But by the way, at the same time, as this happens with kind of the big four right now down to big three, I guarantee you're going to see some more players emerge. And we see more players emerge all the time. So it's still a pretty crazy marketplace. It will rationalize more over time, and I think we've probably just accelerated that process in the last few months because people have to focus on it now.
Well, yeah, to that point, I mean, I've talked to several operators over the past few months, and everybody kind of all agrees that we've fast-forwarded the restaurant industry a decade in terms of the development of both technology, consumer habits, and now the methods in which we get food to them. So there's a lot of, obviously, what seems to be new evolution that is really kind of shifting. When you look at those evolutions, because if you look at the categories, let's just take them for a second. QSR pre-COVID was doing, positive comp sales, but very, very minimal positive comp sales. Fast casual, for the most part, the high number fast casual concepts were doing double-digit comp sales. Casual dining was coming back, and fine dining seemed to be on an upswing. All of this was pre-COVID. Now the tables have flipped. QSR is showing double-digit comp. Fast casual is coming in at single-digit or flat. Casual dining has almost disappeared, and fine dining is nowhere to be found. So my question to you, as a virtual brand developer, if I am a full-service fine dining restaurant, I've got my kitchen here, I've got somewhat of a staff developed, but I just don't have the product for the customer at this certain time. Are those some of the targets that would be best suited to your product?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. Actually, fine dining restaurants are potentially a great partner for us. One of the reasons is, typically fine dining is not associated with delivery. It can be more post-COVID, but often, at least historically, it's not a segment that fine dining focused on. So the nice thing about bringing in Nextbite brands is they are our brands. They're not your brand. So if you're a fine dining establishment, maybe you don't even want to be associated with delivery. Maybe that's not your marketplace and it's not good for your brand. You can still absolutely fulfill orders for Nextbite out of your kitchen. And especially right now during COVID, but even post-COVID, It very often, fine dining is a specific occasion use, and maybe you are open for lunch, but you don't do much lunch business, or
Yeah.
maybe your Mondays and Tuesdays are slow. You can absolutely turn on virtual restaurants just for those times and in those time periods. And frankly, those are operators we love to partner with because they're really good and they're really good at what they do. And we really protect our brand quality by partnering with those types of operators.
Yeah, I could see that being a big factor for, because fine dining, of course, is the ones they've been the most hit, obviously, with COVID, and in restaurant dining, it's pretty much plummeted across the country. And it was interesting during May, we were seeing some rise in those numbers, and then beginning of June, those numbers started falling off, even after the opening occurred. So I anticipate that we're probably going to see a lot more of fine dining kind of needing that, additional push to get in different brands. Is there a lot of setup for a restaurant operator that says, hey, listen, I'm in a fine dining Italian restaurant. I've been doing pizza and pasta for 10 years here. My dining room is closed. I'm still doing takeout, but I need to expand my brand.
Yeah, so actually, in general, virtual brands can be pretty simple to implement. We try to create virtual brands that are very targeted. So if you'll notice, we have brands that are just chicken sandwiches or just burgers or just mac and cheese. Stuff that's very craveable, the market wants, but is very straightforward.
Right.
So for most restaurateurs, this is almost like running an LTO versus a whole nother brand. And maybe they can even running multiple LTOs, because we have operators that run 10, 11 of our brands. But so for most people who are decent operators, not too tough to do. There's also the reason that we've created so many brands is there's a lot of choice. You don't have to do all of them. You can do the ones that work for you.
Right. Yeah. So if I'm an operator and I want to take on 4 or 5 concepts, am I paying you guys by the concept itself, or how does that work?
Our model is really, really straightforward. It's just a straight rev share. We don't have any one-time fees. We don't have any startup costs. There's nothing like that. It is just a straight rev share that, generally speaking, our operators are telling us they're actually making not only more revenue, but they're actually upping their EBITDA and EBITDA percentage because there's so much additional revenue on top. They can afford those excess splits with no additional costs.
Right.
So it is really, really straightforward. And the nice thing about it is we think it incents the right behavior all around.
Yeah.
If we do our job well, we make money. If we don't, we don't, and no one does.
Sure.
And our contracts are just month to month. So if it works, it works.
Seems like a no-brainer.
If it doesn't work, we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, especially when you're talking about, most operators have a physical plant that they have the capacity for more volume output, but they just don't have the orders coming in for it. So that, I think, could be huge. Let's kind of talk about concepts that are kind of in limbo right now. Some that are developing their own delivery systems. They're looking at new models and to do curbside, things like that would eliminate third-party, third-party ordering. I wouldn't be going to Uber Eats to get that product now. I might be going to their website or something like that. How does that play into what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so really, you can run a virtual brand on any platform, right? As long as people find it, there's no reason you can't manage it on whichever platform you'd like.
Yeah.
A couple things with specifically what we do. So one is we've created new brands that are new to the marketplace. In our estimation, the quickest way to get adoption of those brands and first try and revenue in the doors for our partners is to meet the customer where they already are.
Yeah, go to the
so
platforms.
They're already in these marketplaces, and we will turn on a virtual brand in the community that no one's heard of before with no pre-marketing, just literally turning it on the app, and we'll get orders in the first minute that it's on.
Really?
People are there and they want more choice. So the pent-up market demand is there. But there's no reason that you can't also do this yourself. If you're creating a brand that gets a certain amount of equity and people really like and they really are behind, you can absolutely move that to your own app, to your own URL. There's a lot of different ways you can market these things. The trick is you just need to again, you need to meet the consumer where they are.
For sure.
And if they have no way to know about you, that's the trick. I mean, and that's really what people are, yes, people are paying for delivery on these apps, but they're really paying for a marketplace.
Yeah.
They're paying for a captive audience.
Yeah, I think, that is the compelling argument, I think, for third-party marketplaces, is just the amount of dollars that are being spent on acquisition, marketing acquisition, the app promotion, obviously the big awareness factor that, these third-party marketplaces bring to the industry. So I think that's the benefit. Still, if it is your business and it's most of your business, then I think that's where the rub comes. If it's an incremental lift and kind of is moving into a new vertical that isn't damaging your brand or creating kind of an offshoot of your brand, then I think that's a very beneficial value that you guys are bringing to the market. I'm kind of curious, so when you look at let's kind of talk about data for a minute, in the sense of some operators really live off of the data. Maybe it's their own email list or open table or whatever it might be. That's been a big hurdle for third-party companies to actually provide that data back to those operators. Is there any difference in the way that you guys work with them in terms of data acquisition?
There isn't currently. So you're right. That is actually one of the challenges of the third-party model, is that you don't own the data.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot written about that, where you need to own your customer data. You need to have that direct relationship. And I don't actually disagree with that.
Yeah.
One of the values we bring to our partners is, for their own brands, they can still do that. Mm-hmm. If they want to just add more revenue without worrying about that direct customer connection, they can add our brands and let us worry about that side of it.
Yeah,
and by the way, over time, Paul, my guess is that we will evolve on our side too, to be able to, either through contracts with the third parties as they evolve, or through other channels, get more access to that customer data and be able to own that relationship more closely. Yeah. Right now, we're quite happy to get our brands out in the marketplace quickly, to let people try them, to kind of grow that awareness. And then over time, we kind of evolve into another state where we really worry about that a little more than we are now.
Mm-hmm. With virtual brands, we've been tracking here for about the last 2 or 3 years, and the growth was somewhat nascent. I mean, it was very slow in terms of virtual brands. Obviously, once COVID came about, the transition to virtual brands was almost overnight. And now we're tracking what appears to be about 1,500 in the US. You mentioned around 1,000 potentially by year end just on your brands. So we're anticipating this number could get to somewhere in the range of around 3,000 virtual brands. Sounds a little bit low compared to what you guys are doing and maybe where the market is going. How far do you think virtual restaurants can go looking out? Because this really starts to affect other things like real estate, operations, all those kind of things. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a wonderful question, Paul, and I certainly will not pretend to have a crystal ball on this. What I will tell you is that our estimates have all been low so far. We modeled this year out pre-COVID that we'd probably have 300 virtual restaurants around by the end of the year. That'll be next month for us. Mm-hmm. We revised our assumptions post-COVID to maybe 500. That could be the next month after that. So it really is. It's such a fluid situation, and it's not just that there's this huge amount of demand capacity that's out there, but it's also very turbulent. Mm-hmm. I was just out in California last week or the week before last, and literally we got there and restaurants were open, and the next day they were closed. Yeah. So, and that's happening everywhere right now. So as we're all kind of trying to deal with this turbulence, it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. I will say this. Anyone who is not thinking about away from prem as strategic to their business for the next decade or 2 decades is way out of the loop. And by the way, that was true pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. This stuff was moving this direction pre-COVID. We have just, to your point earlier, we've just accelerated by 10 years. Yeah. Very quickly. So, I think the sky's the limits for virtual brands, mostly because there's a certain amount of infrastructure out there. There's a certain amount of costs out there. Yes, you can go build new stuff. There's a lot of things we could do. We'll redesign the restaurant soon. There's all sorts of things that are going to happen. But right now, why would everyone not want to maximize the return on their existing investment? Why would they not
Yeah.
want to maximize the productivity of their staff? Why would they not want to keep the best people around during this time and keep their businesses running? I have no idea. I mean, that's just kind of the way it's moving. And so my guess is 3,000 is probably conservative.
Well, that would be a significant brand growth of virtual restaurants if it accelerates past that. I know there's a handful of companies. I've talked to the Doghouse guys. I know they've got multiple brands under their roof now that they're franchising and developing that kind of model. So it's a little, it's a little unique and different than what you guys are doing. But I definitely see that kind of moving forward. Let's talk about the consumer angle on this, because this is something that continues to evolve, and it's one that every operator is keeping a very, very close monitor on, and that is the style in which consumers are interfacing with restaurants. So recently we did a huge poll on respondents to ask them just, would you want free delivery? Would you want the restaurant to deliver for a fee, or would you go with a third-party fee-based? It was about 25% on the third-party fee base and about 75% on the restaurant side. So here's my question. With that kind of parameter that's happening within the consumer base, this is customers that are ordering food at these restaurants every day, do you feel, where is the magic spot for virtual restaurants, third-party marketplaces like what you're talking about? Where's that magic number that makes this profitable for operators to move forward? Do they need 50% of consumers that would go that route? Where do you think?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm not sure how you interpret that data, Paul. I kind of interpret that data as people care about restaurants. They care that their local restaurants are staying around. They want the money to go to those operators, not to someone else. So I think what it really says is we, who are trying to enable that industry, need to be very thoughtful about exactly that.
Right.
That we want to make sure the money is going to the operators. We want to make sure that they're getting a fair share of that. We want to make sure that we're optimizing kind of the rest of that system. I think right now the challenge is it's hard to optimize that system. I mean, there's a reason that restaurants don't do their own delivery. It's costly to do your own delivery. It's tough to do your own delivery. There's insurance and other fees there and risk that people don't want to take on. So I think what I get from that data point is we want to make sure that fees are very transparent. We want to make sure that they seem fair and they appear fair to the operators, and that the operators feel they're fair, and that the public feels that way too. I think that, as far as trying to set a threshold on, where do you have to get to kind of manage your own stuff, I would say, look, it makes a ton of sense out there. You see the brands that are doing it right now well, like a Chipotle or a PF Chang's, or these folk, Five Guys. There's some people who have done a really good job owning their own apps and figuring out how to maximize it. By the way, they're still using third-party delivery. Sure. Most of them, right? They're keeping that customer data in-house. They're managing that customer experience. And I don't see a lot of pushback from customers on that. So I don't think the pushback is that that's happening. I think the pushback is they want to make sure that people aren't just, that we've seen a lot in the news about what people find are unfair percentages. And they want to make sure that the restaurants are able to stay open and make money. And by the way, that's what we want to make sure of too. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's,
as we see, this is still all very new to most operators, but even more so to consumers and guests of these restaurant operators. They're completely changing their habits. I know my own household is, we used to be a 2 or 3 time a week dining out, and that's obviously been changed. And now it's kind of the shopping cart of which restaurant do we use for third party or for delivery and takeout pickup. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how those move forward. Let's talk about the technology that is happening for the actual guest interface, because that's something that has really started to kind of blossom here in the industry, and that being things like curbside or managed cubicle or systems within the restaurants to be able to handle that delivery uptick. With you guys working with brands that are using multiple concepts, if they were to go to a takeout or a pickup order system or something of that nature, have you seen any kind of restaurants out there that have just kind of surprised you in terms of their innovativeness?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been, it's not even as much surprised. I would say I've been impressed with the nimbleness of the industry and how quickly people have adapted. I mean,
Yeah.
and from just here locally, there's a local restaurant we frequent that figured out curbside delivery without any app or anything, just with their phone, and
Uh-huh.
figured out how to do that very quickly, figured out how to do contactless payment, things that they had to figure out overnight. And that to me is great. It's innovative, it's impressive. Um, the apps out there, I think I called one out already. I was impressed by the Five Guys app quite a bit in terms of, I don't know if you've used it before, but they have a not only a contactless curbside and delivery and now pickup in person option on there, but they do a really good job of tracking where you are.
Okay.
And when you're there and you literally click I'm on my way, and then you allow a GPS signal so they know where you are in relation to them. They love their fries hot when you show up. So they're very smart about that. And then there's a I am here button you click when you're there for curbside. So
Right.
I think that kind of innovation is very smart. Everyone who has figured out how to, kind of pair with, we've talked about before, but kind of pair with the third parties, but still own that customer experience. I think that's very bright. I was really impressed by some of I don't think we've touched on it before, but some of the fine dining stuff that was out there where literally I think I saw an interview with Tom Colicchio where he was talking about at some of his restaurants, he was literally turning them into basically high-end butcher shops and
Hmm.
high-end grocers
Yeah.
for delivery. And have access to these wonderful products that are out there that most of us don't ever see, and you could order from there and
Right.
prepare your own meals. And some of the food kits and that meal kits, that sort of thing. Honestly, I'm impressed by all of it, Paul, because what it
Yeah.
shows to me is this kind of indomitable spirit of restaurant operators that, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll make it work, whatever it is.
Right, for sure. Yeah, Abe Conlon, Fat Rice in Chicago, he was one of the first to kind of make that move to do those high-end markets.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see how those evolve, because I think that's what's happening now is we've got a whole new slant on restaurant categories, and I shouldn't maybe even call them restaurants as much anymore, because we're going to see a lot more uniqueness in terms of what kind of products they're going to be serving, all the way down to specialty goods, which I think will find their way into the restaurant, which used to be where you wanted some specialty goods, you had to get through a specialty retailer like a Whole Foods or a specialty market, somewhere like that. Now I feel like that's going to find its way into either full service casual and even fast casual dining in terms of kits. So Uber Eats, I'm ordering not only my lunch today, but tonight I've got my wife and we're doing a little wine tasting, and I order in a charcuterie or something of that nature that comes in packaged goods. That I think could really open up some of the very interesting aspects of where food will go. Last question for you, and that is looking forward. When you look at the categories that you feel, based on what you guys have seen in terms of your success, do you feel fast casual, casual dining, fine dining, do you feel like all of them move forward, or is there one player that you think has the predominant opportunity here?
I actually think they all move forward, and the reason for that is, and by the way, this may be part thought and part hope, because I like you, my family loves going out to eat. We love restaurants. We always have. I don't want them to go anywhere. It's one of the reasons I do this, because I don't want casual restaurants or fine dining
Right.
restaurants to leave. I don't want this to turn into nothing but delivery. Our model is all based on enabling restaurants to continue to do what they do and add to it. So I actually think you're going to see more and more of that. We have one solution for that. There will be multiple solutions out there that will
Sure.
allow people to continue to run an in-person restaurant. People will be really, they've already gotten very, very smart about how you can do those things safely, what the market expects. I don't think that market's going away, but I think it's going to evolve. And you're going to see restaurants that look nothing like they look today,
Exactly.
but they're still fine dining. They're
Yeah.
still casual. But they have a whole nother component to them that is for delivery, that is virtual brands, that is, I'm not sure what yet.
Yeah.
But I see no reason why we can't keep all those things. It doesn't, I don't think we've just evolved to, I certainly hope we are not going to evolve to a place where it's all ordering on your phone all the time.
Yeah.
That is an unoccasion use, but
Yeah.
there are multiple occasion uses out there, and I think they're still going to be in 10 years and 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. Great having you on the session today. Jeffrey Matting, CEO at Nextbite. It's been great having you. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. I really enjoyed it.
All right, so if you guys, of course, you're getting ready to maybe check out another session here on FoodTech21, make sure and hit the bubble. And that is where the Q&A begins, because you actually get a chance to talk with our speakers and some of the operators that are on the session. So that's where your Q&A can start. And of course, make sure and hit us up over on Twitter as well. You can hit me up at Paul Barron if you've got something special or interesting that can kind of go in this direction from when it comes to technology in the food service industry. We're going to continue to cover this right here on Food Tech 21. We'll catch you in a bit.